gonna count to 10.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Okay, in filmmaking, above the line means that you have the influence. Below it, you are taking orders. So today we are ranking film trade publications and deciding what truly deserves a seat at the top. Let's get into it. So I'll start this by saying there are a couple of honorable mentions I don't think anybody is doing terrible work in this space, right? These film trades do a great job of providing us information. Some are large, some are small, some have far-reaching tendrils, some are super niche. I want to give a shout out to FilmMaker magazine, which is great for like craft interviews and festival coverage. They're less scoop driven, so they're not like knee-jerk reaction-y, and they're definitely more filmmaker focused. Cine Europa, I will never know how to pronounce it correctly unless somebody tells me in the comments. You want to tell me in the comments? I want to give them a shout out. They're solid if you're tracking the European Union or just European film market and public grants there. Give a shout out to No Film School. They're doing their thing. I feel like they're a little bit clickbaity, but that's kind of the game as it is when you are a smaller company competing against huge trades like Hollywood Reporter or Variety. And then below the line, I literally have a segment called What's Above the Line. So shout out to Below the Line, which is basically trades for crew. It gives you union updates, gear stuff, behind the scenes business stuff. Those are my honorable mentions. And then what we'll do is we will go through these trade publications we'll do basically my top 9. And I'll give you the pros and cons of each and kind of why I rank them where they are. Number 9 is Box Office Pro. The pros to me about Box Office Pro is that it's really kind of the go-to for distribution nerds. If you're trying to follow how these things are performing and what the numbers are, the numbers in the industry, Box Office Pro is great for that. They have deep tracking of box office trends and projections and global gross. They have industry reports that you really won't find anywhere else. But these are the cons. It is extremely niche. It really doesn't cover broader film, TV business as a whole. And it kind of reads like a trade journal from 1997 because in a lot of ways it kind of is. Number 8 on the list of my favorite trade publications is World of Real. And I love y'all, World of Real, but you need different fonts, please. I will never talk trash about you, but I will talk trash about your font in every single episode of this show. So pros of World of Real is this deeply niche. It's award season focused, and it's kind of like film Twitter's guilty pleasure because they write the right stories about the right things with the right approach. They operate kind of more like a blog, which are scoops that ultimately typically end up being true. They have bold opinions, they have spicy rankings, and they are really not afraid to ruffle feathers. You can do that when you are a little bit smaller. The downside is, again, sometimes it feels like it's just a person in their basement working on stories, which is great because you have that passion. But that's the scope of what you get. Also, source of vetting can be a little bit shaky. It's not considered a real trade by a lot of people, but I do see it pop up frequently, and I do get news from it. I just find myself occasionally going out to validate that news somewhere else. Number 7 on my list of my favorite trades, and I've quoted from them today, is The Wrap. I think it's great for scoops, especially involving executives and drama and legal battles. It really does a good job of covering box office stuff with decent insights, and it sometimes outpaces the big 3 trades when it comes to reporting on media shakeups. Now, their reputation for clickbait headlines and less rigorous reporting I feel like they're working really hard to combat that, but it is still out there. There's kind of an inconsistent editorial tone and quality, but that's what happens when you are a smaller company. I feel like that's a trend here, right? And then they're just not, as widely cited as Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, or Deadline. but they belong on this list. Number 6 is one that I've only recently discovered, but I'm spending more and more time on it, and that is The Ankler. They have really great deep insider insights, especially from former trades. They have really good, like, real talk about money, power, and ego in Hollywood, and that candid approach is so refreshing. And it's kind of, it's a Substack style voice that makes it really feel fresh and unfiltered. The cons are, it's a subscription model, with walls off most content. There's kind of like a Hollywood for Hollywood people, less useful to outsiders type of vibe. When you're reading something like The Hollywood Reporter or Vanity, it's like they're largely they do cover the things that you want them to cover, but they're clearly written for a larger audience, to be consumed by a larger audience. And some articles just kind of feel like backroom gossip a little bit, and I'm there for that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm there for that. I love me some gossip. Number 5, I really struggled with this, but I have to put them here. Screen Daily. I think that they are incredible for coverage of international markets, especially, things like Cannes and Berlin and TIFF. They're great for sales agents, distributors, and people tracking global film movements. And it's real journalism with solid writing, and they've done a good job of, the data nerd in me is like, they've done a good job of structuring their website in a way that's very data backed. The cons are that it's very UK-centric and slightly less accessible to US readers. The tone is super dry, which I can appreciate. And sometimes it's a little bit more like reading a short excerpt from something that just quickly summarizes it, more so than doing a true deep dive. And yeah, that's about it for Screen Rant. Sorry. We're getting into the meat and potatoes here. Number 4, if I'm ranking all of these industry trade publications, I would say number 4 is definitely IndieWire. They are the most indie friendly of the bunch. We can all appreciate that. They're champions for small films, festivals, and auteurs. I think they have really thoughtful analysis, especially when it comes to criticism and awards predictions. And I appreciate that they cover screaming. There's lots of screaming going on in Hollywood right now. No, they cover streaming and tech and, changing industry structures, which is, I think, super important. And it's sometimes lost on the bigger trades. To do that, to stay on top of those things. Now it's IndieWire, so sometimes it's a little bit like film Twitter, but with a budget. It leans a little too hard into awards obsession, which is I think every filmmaker wants to win an award and they want to be acknowledged for the work that they do. And I understand that culture, and I myself introduce myself as an award-winning filmmaker, so I understand like how easy it is to get awards sometimes. It's also not IndieWire's fault, but they do lack some clout in the industry. They stay on top of stories. Honestly, I think I probably find myself visiting IndieWire more than any other of these sites because of how great their analysis is. But number 3 on the list is going to be The Hollywood Reporter, or THR. Pros, they're really kind of best for long-form investigative features, which is fantastic. It still has some journalistic teeth, which is interesting because the name, for some reason, I associate the name with being more clickbaity, even though it's just not true, right? I'm literally looking at a story right here by The Hollywood Reporter. Los Angeles film and TV production levels plunge. And it is great insights and analysis. It's polished, it's readable, even for like the normies, the average peeps that are popping in to read more about something that they're passionate about. It's actually owned by Penske, which also owns Variety, so that's kind of an interesting twist there. So there's kind of a corporate sameness vibe that's creeping in between that and Variety. They're getting more lifestyle and celebrity adjacent in tone over time, which it's hard, when you're owned by a corporate overlord, to try to maintain maintain dry analysis in the face of the greater audiences and value, money-wise, monetary value of covering more gossipy topics. It also then, lags a little bit behind publications like Variety when it comes to breaking big scoops, but we're literally talking a matter of hours, so it's not a wild difference. That brings me to number 2, my second to top, my penultimate trade publication would probably be Deadline. To me, they're a speed demon. I feel like they are often the first in breaking, casting, acquisition, and deal news. They have really great historical culture. They're a hardcore focus on the business stuff, so there's less fluff. It's more deals, data, and sometimes drama. The tone can be pretty arrogant sometimes, and weirdly passive aggressive, kind of like a told ya culture that's living on in its lifespan. The site's kind of a formatting nightmare. It is not my favorite site from an organization standpoint, and it feels sometimes like you're reading in a wind tunnel because things are just kind of flying past you. And there's really less emphasis on investigative or analytical content, which is a fact of life in this industry, but you're going to get that, right? When you get to the bigger trade publications, you're going to get that watering down of the business content in order to focus on the goss, the tea. Speaking of tea, number 1, my top ranked trade publication. I'm sorry, I had to do it. It's Variety, right? It's the industry gold standard and everyone reads it, even if we all pretend that we don't. They have deep studio relationships, which means that they get early access to breaking news. They have solid international coverage, especially for things like award seasons, and it does have an award season obsession. And they're kind of recognized by Google as the top tier source for quoting, and Google boosts it because they see the value there. But there are just so obvious downsides to it, which is one that can be, we talked about it earlier in the show today, it can be a little too friendly with industry power players. It feels like access journalism. It feels like journalism with some bias to it. And there are people there that don't do that, but there are definitely people there that write through a lens that is not filmmaker friendly. The Ryan Coogler and Sinners story is the perfect example of that. The paywall is annoying for sure, and it's definitely getting worse year over year. And the editorials sometimes feel, again, sanitized, like they're being scrubbed by people. That's it. That is my list of my 9 favorite trade publications, and a couple of honorable mentions for the little guys who are working their butts off to become big industry players.